Hello there. Welcome into a Friday edition of the show. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, of course, is sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts. The number to reach me is 719-247-1313, or you can hit me up on X at Gingerly Tweets. If you're watching the live stream, we got to do something about the lighting in here. We'll work on that. But in the meantime, content is king. That's what drives this. Whether it's the video version of the show or the audio version. Let's get into it, shall we? And we begin with the end of another era of a Russ playing professional sports in the state of Colorado. Russell Westbrook reportedly will opt out of his $3.4 million player option for next season and become a free agent because he wants to make more money. So this does probably mark the end of the Russell Westbrook era in Denver, and what a long, strange trip it's been. Well, not long, but a trip and strange. But it ends after just one season. And you look from a return on investment, right? The criticism around Michael Porter is very much put through the lens of look at how much money he makes, right? It matters, right? It matters how much money you make. And Russell Westbrook was basically on the complete opposite end of the spectrum of Michael Porter last year. So you look at the money he was making, which was about $1 million more than Hunter Tyson was making. And he averages 13, 6, and 5. Has a couple of moments in the postseason. I think that's pretty good return on investment. But now here's the issue. Now he wants more money. So he's not a 13, 6, and 5 player with a moment here and there in the postseason making $3.5 million. This is now a 13, 6, and 5 player with the ability to have a moment or two in the playoffs wanting to make, let's say, double that. Conservatively. I don't know what he's going to fetch on the open market. I don't know who's going to pay the guy. Now more stuff comes into play. Now you're looking at his impact and going, okay, at 3.4, you know what? You take the good with the bad. 3.4 for a player of Russell Westbrook's caliber. You'll take that. But now if he wants more, then the other stuff comes into it. Now you're like, well, he did pretty much blow 2 major games down the stretch of the season. And Aaron Gordon did reportedly kind of have to go talk to him in a locker room after a Clipper game about getting on the same page with the rest of the team. Now you look at his inability to knock down threes, something that the Nuggets need to put at the top of their wish list this offseason. And all this other stuff comes into play, and you go, I don't know that he's really worth it. At least that's where I land. Russell Westbrook was a worthwhile flyer to take last year. Now, if you have to pay him, now it's not, why not? Right? Like the what the heck, why not? Now it's like, why? Especially when finances are as tight as they are for the Denver Nuggets, because now with double the money, Russell Westbrook, like, you're depending on the guy. It's not found money. It's not a flyer anymore. Now you're investing in him. I don't think I would be comfortable with that. Would you be? Now, I don't blame Russell Westbrook or any athlete from trying to parlay any level of success into more money, especially someone at this stage of Russell Westbrook's career. I don't blame him. Again, I don't know who's going to pay him, but I don't blame him for trying. But give it a shot. Okay, so I don't have anything against Russell Westbrook making this decision. I do have something against the Denver Nuggets not being able to find a way to secure his services for next year at the agreed upon player option. Because this is, as much as I don't blame Russell Westbrook, I also don't blame Bruce Brown. I also don't blame, who else am I missing? Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Like, I don't blame these guys. But I do look at the Denver Nuggets and say, at what point are you going to be able to retain somebody's services? When are you going to be able to keep one of these guys from going and cashing in and leaving you needing to search a barren wasteland for another alternative? And this has been going on since they won the title. And if you think about it, they haven't really replaced Bruce Brown. Right? Because if you say, well, Christian Brown takes over for Bruce Brown, then that leaves a void where Christian Brown was. And then Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was also replaced by Christian Brown. So the Nuggets haven't reclaimed their depth since they won the title. They're constantly chasing, let's just call it the void that Bruce Brown left. But now Russell Westbrook is gone. And he was a replacement for Reggie Jackson, not for Bruce Brown. If you're really looking at it, they got rid of Reggie Jackson, Brown, Russell Westbrook. So the Nuggets have been constantly trying to find these guys to somewhat diminishing returns. And the whole idea of this offseason is for the Denver Nuggets to get better. Like, that's the goal here. Coming off the championship, it was trying to maintain. Now this is a team that is getting passed up by multiple teams in the West. They got to make a move to counter this, to get back in the thick of things in the West, to challenge OKC. And losing Russell Westbrook, not going to help. So now, really, the question is this Jalen Pickett's gig? Is this the full, we're buying in on the young guys? Is this Jalen Pickett's gig, or are the Nuggets going to go out and look for another veteran of the Reggie Jackson, Russell Westbrook, Bruce Brown ilk to try and fill that role as Jamal Murray's backup? Because at some point, the Nuggets need to realize that they're not going to continue to get great ROI on these guys. At some point, they got to hang on to somebody. Right now, the Nuggets are worse than they were in Game 7. Right? That's just facts. They haven't done anything other than potentially lose Russell Westbrook. That is a worse basketball team. So what do you do to fix it? Are you banking on Jalen Pickett now taking that role and realizing whatever potential you see in him? But that could take a while. That could take almost an entire season. Are you that patient? Are you that bought in to the direction? Or are we going to see the Denver Nuggets dangle that money in front of somebody else, like I'm just throwing out a name, like a Malcolm Brogdon, to try and fill that roster spot. But again, are the Nuggets going to be better after such a move? You just wonder at some point when the arrow's going to start pointing back up for the Denver Nuggets. When they're going to really acquire something to make their team better instead of trying to perpetually fill a void left by somebody on the roster the year prior. But that could be in the investment in the young guys. Right? We heard a lot of talk about that, both when Josh Kroenke spoke after the season and then also when he announced that David Adelman was going to be the full-time head coach. The player development side of it. Are they going all in on that? And is that going to sit well with Nikola Jokic? He said they needed depth. Does he believe in these young guys? Because he also said, as currently constructed, this team's not good enough to win a title. Those guys, the young guys that I'm referring to, are a part of the Denver Nuggets as currently constructed. And I certainly don't think if Nikola Jokic is paying attention or if he's hearing this news all the way from Serbia, that he could look at this as the Nuggets getting better. And that's why I just keep going back to the only real change that this team can make is by looking to move Michael Porter or Jamal Murray in one of two kinds of deals. Either one, where you bundle up a Porter or Jamal Murray with other lesser players to get an upgrade from one of those two guys, or you take them and trade them for two lesser players that you believe in their upside, which would then make you deeper, but also make your roster fit a little bit better with today's constraints in the NBA financial model. But to me, everything is lateral. If we're continuing to just talk about the spot that Russell Westbrook had, which was the spot that Reggie Jackson had, which was the spot, you get what I'm saying? These are all lateral moves. These aren't going to, even getting Russell Westbrook didn't greatly improve the Denver Nuggets. In a vacuum, you didn't totally hate what you got from him, but it ultimately didn't get the Nuggets any closer to getting back to the NBA Finals. So that's why a move of substance, I think, is required. I bought into Calvin Booth's vision by bringing in the young guys. I don't know if he hit on all of them. And maybe part of it is because of Michael Malone. But I look at Peyton Watson, I'm like, we're 4 years into this. Does this guy have more room to grow? Strother, Pickett, sure. Potentially, there's some growth there. But growth in the way that the Denver Nuggets need them to grow. But if you're going to fully invest in the young players, the Strothers, the Holmes, the Picketts, the Watsons, you're basically experimenting with this year. That's what this year is. It's a year of experimentation because the guy that you had as the head coach didn't buy into the vision of developing these guys, so these guys aren't developed. They're at least behind in their development. Okay, so now do you go all in? Maybe it pays dividends, and maybe you move past the second round. But the risk is you don't. And then what have you gained? You're just another year behind. And again, I keep going back to Nikola Jokic. Is he okay with that? The only thing that this guy has any interest in playing for are championships. That's it. That's all he wants to do. So is he going to be okay with this roll of the dice? I mean, even if it's not buying into the young players, even if it is bringing another, veteran retread in, they're still not making the NBA Finals. So this is about Russell Westbrook, but more so it's about the bigger picture. It's about the fact that even if the Denver Nuggets somewhat successfully find a replacement for Russell Westbrook, that you probably can't say that they're title contenders. So it's like Russell Westbrook impacts them, but not really. This is about the bigger picture here. Yeah, I just think that the Denver Nuggets have to do something of note. You either move the needle forward by getting into this Durant sweepstakes at the last minute. We'll talk about that in a little bit. You try to get some better, or at least you show that there is a plan in place by saying, you know what, we got to take this step back. We're built under a different financial model. We got to get ourselves back in order financially. I think, I don't know for Nikola Jokic, but I think for many fans, that would be acceptable because at least it seems like there's a plan. Constantly replacing the spot that Russell Westbrook last held is not a plan. But now you also have to take care of that. You can't bank on Russell Wilson. I knew I was going to do it once. Russell Westbrook coming back. And I'm saying all of this knowing how can the Denver Nuggets truly show what vision they have by making roster moves when they don't have a person currently employed in a role that would be doing things with the roster? Who spoke to Russell Westbrook's agent to try and get him to stay? Who did the convincing? Or lack thereof? Who was doing that? Was that Josh Kroenke? Was that Ben Tenzer? Because it didn't work. Russell Westbrook's leaving. Who's going to get Nikola Jokic to sign his deal? Is that Josh Kroenke? I mean, it's hard to really talk about where the Nuggets go from here and what they're going to do this offseason when they don't have a general manager. So I guess what I'm getting at is that Russell Westbrook leaving is kind of emblematic. That alone is not reason to push the panic button, but it's emblematic of what the Nuggets have been since they've won the title. They only lose players. They don't get any in return. The roster keeps getting worse. And the only thing that they do to try and fix it is get a veteran on being paid next to nothing, which is not going to get you the type of player that you need to ultimately get back to the NBA Finals. So I wouldn't lose too much sleep over Russell Westbrook leaving necessarily. But it's just about the bigger picture that the Nuggets continue to lose talented players and haven't really replaced them. Haven't really replaced any of them. And they're going to expect to be back in the NBA Finals next year? Hard to see it. If only I could get a more clear vision stated to me by someone who's the general manager of the Denver Nuggets. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Russell Westbrook opting out of his player option You upset about it? What do you think the Nuggets should do with that? It's times like these I wonder. I just was thinking this today. Remind me again why the Denver Nuggets let Tim Connolly leave. They didn't get anything in return for him. It wasn't a trade. Why'd they let him leave? Because things have started to get worse with the Denver Nuggets. And maybe they wouldn't be if Tim Connolly was still in charge. Talk about what he's up to in his current gig coming up in a little bit. 719-247-1313. Coming up next. Man, just when you thought this Stanley Cup final couldn't deliver anymore, we got last night. If you missed it this morning, our extra sweet deal of the week, courtesy of City Golf COS, went live. You get an hour of indoor simulator play for just $25. That's a 50% savings. If you're unfamiliar with City Golf COS, those are the golf simulators inside Trainwreck. And I've talked about them before. The other day I was actually out there teeing up a little bit. You could play like literally any golf course that you could possibly think of. You can even play a famous sci-fi space movie with Wookiees, and you could play a course theme like that on the golf simulator, apparently. So that is a 50% savings. So extrasports1300.com to pick those up. We have a limited number of them, so act quickly. Russell Westbrook opting out of his player option. Your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Let's kick it off with Dave, who's calling in. Dave, your thoughts on Russell Westbrook, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ryan. I've been listening. Had a chance to call, and thanks for always taking my call, man. But hey, listen, I'm not really worried about the Russell Westbrook thing.
Mm-hmm.
What I am worried about, and I think we could take a lesson from the OKC Invitational with respect to their role players. I thought Mr. Westbrook was going to be a solid role player, and he was at times, but he was erratic at times.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that, a kid like Caruso or this kid that came off the bench the other day for Indiana, I think we have our big three, or at least I hope we will. And then with some solid role players, and I know you kind of talked about it yesterday with depth like Indiana, then I think we'll be okay. But right now it all stinks, and I think we're in trouble, man. What do you think?
Well, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, that losing Russell Westbrook in a vacuum doesn't mean that the Nuggets are going to collapse, but it's emblematic of the direction they continue to go, that they're not getting any deeper as a roster. And meanwhile, the core guys that you refer to, and I think there are two that we're really all on the same page talking about, maybe are giving the Nuggets diminishing returns as well. So it's just, it's I don't know when they're going to stem the tide and turn it back the other way, Dave. And I don't know that just simply giving somebody $3.5 million that Russell Westbrook was making is the type of move to ultimately cure all that ails the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, and I agree. And again, this is an old theme, and we're probably all getting tired of it, but we don't have a GM, and somebody needs to act, because I'm so afraid that we're going to waste the Joker's career or not make it as long. And if we do get some support, we can keep him a few more years. But as a season ticket holder, I just tend to be really worried about the whole situation. Any word on their GM matters?
No, not it. Haven't heard word one about it. My theory is the longer this goes, and we've already gone about as long as it can, the NBA offseason's not that far away, I think they're just going to remove the interim tag from Ben Tenzer. That's kind of what I think. I think they're taking time to be able to sell Ben Tenzer a little bit more, to say, hey, we went out, we looked around, we spent all this time, and we couldn't, and we had our guy in the house all along. That's my theory. I'm not getting inside information. I just think that's probably what we're going to hear as soon as this NBA Finals is wrapped up.
Do you think Durant would be a good situation?
I think it would, but here's the issue. I mean, Durant's asking price, or Phoenix's asking price, is only going up because now Giannis isn't going anywhere. So the San Antonios, the Houstons that were trying to get in on Giannis, if Giannis isn't going anywhere, now Kevin Durant becomes the big prize out there. And I think that the Nuggets already had a chance that they were going to get outbid to begin with. And now if KD is the most sought after player, I think that there's no chance that the Nuggets can outbid anybody for his services. I like the idea in theory of Kevin Durant. I would give up almost anything on the Denver Nuggets to get Kevin Durant. I just don't think they have enough to outbid San Antonio or Houston.
I totally agree with that. On another note, am I going to see you at the Senior Open?
You will. I don't know if we'll see each other while I'm doing the show because they have me tucked away somewhere, but I'll be out there, I think, all 4 days. So I'm sure we'll run into each other at some point.
I will definitely introduce myself. I'm a big fan, and I appreciate your knowledge, brother.
Well, I appreciate you calling in, and are always welcome to call in anytime, Dave. Really appreciate it. 719-247-1313. Couple of texts coming in on Russell Westbrook opting out. This from the 719, heard Westbrook could still re-sign. The NBA salary cap and how they dump salaries is very confusing. And I haven't seen anything to that end, but let's just take it that Russell Westbrook would like to remain in Denver just at more money. Do you want him at more money? And also, can the Nuggets afford him at more money? To your point about how they dump salaries, what salaries are they dumping? Let's just set aside what the rules are in place. Let's just take it that the Nuggets, in order to afford whatever Russell Westbrook is now asking for, would have to dump contracts. What contract are they dumping? Because Zeke Najee's deal has been a bad deal for years now, and they haven't been able to move him. Is Dario Saric going to opt in? Like, that's the whole problem. The first step is, do you even want Russell Westbrook back? Okay? And then if the answer is yes, I'll say, are you sure at a higher dollar amount? And then if you still say sure, then it's, well, who are the Nuggets getting rid of to be able to afford Russell Westbrook? So there are a lot of layers to this. I agree. It's all very complicated, but just we can simplify it and say, do you want the guy back? Are you willing to pay more for that guy to come back? And how are you going to get rid of these contracts that you've already tried to get rid of and haven't been able to do so? That's why all roads keep leading back to, if the Nuggets are really going to set themselves up for future success, one of two things has to happen. Either A, all these young guys have got to hit all this year. They all got to hit. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but that's one way. All those guys hit. Or B, you take a member of your core group, Jamal Murray or Michael Porter, preferably, and get depth that way. Get younger that way. Get more financially compliant that way. And then at least it gives you the flexibility to start looking for the future. Half the problem with Russell Westbrook opting out is literally it's just his dollar amount that the Nuggets now have to spend, which only afforded them a guy that's burned every bridge in every NBA city he's ever lived in. Like, is there another guy that fits that profile that they can fit into that small space that they just opened up? I don't think that they can. This coming in from the 719. What was the Denver Nuggets record this year with Russell Westbrook when he did with Russell? And then when Russell did not play enough said, the Denver Nuggets this year were 7-0 when Russell Westbrook was not in the lineup. So there you go. But I agree. Like, Russell Westbrook leaving is not going to make a huge difference one way or another. But in the same token, the quality of player that they are able to bring in for that little money also won't make a huge difference one way or another. So that's why I say the news of the day is that Russell Westbrook is opting out, and we can have a discussion about whether that experiment worked and whether you want him back and yada, yada, yada. But really, to Dave's point, it's the bigger question here of what exactly is the Nuggets' plan? Because here we are, first bit of news coming out this offseason, quote unquote offseason, NBA finals aren't over yet, is that the Nuggets are losing another player. If they make a move with either Jamal Murray or Michael Porter, you won't care one iota about losing Russell Westbrook. Trust me. Either because you'll be so mad that either Jamal Murray or Michael Porter got traded, or you'll love the trade so much and it will improve the Nuggets the way they need to be improved that you're like, well, it's not a big deal that they lose Russell Westbrook. Continue to take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. We'll stay with this, but again, there was an all-timer of a hockey game last night. I do want to talk about that, and I'll do it after this break. Treat your dad to a $5,000 basement, barbecue, backyard upgrade, or whatever else he would like. It's $5,000. It goes a long way. Pop gets to pick. Head to extrasports1300.com to enter this national contest for a chance at $5,000 for your top pop, sponsored locally by Bullseye Plumbing, Heating, and Air. You scored a bullseye, the best you can get. Last night, and follow me on this. Last night is why you start Stuart Skinner if you were the Edmonton Oilers. Because replacing a goalie at any point, either going into a game, in the middle of a game, that is very much a break glass in case of emergency type situation. And it's proven to be effective. Not for everybody, Pete DeBoer, but it does have a track record of working. But this is why Chris Knobloch made the right decision. Because if you start Stuart Skinner, and I got to imagine that he had some reservations about the way that Stuart Skinner played in the previous game. Right? I got to imagine he wasn't like dead set no matter what. Stuart Skinner's our guy. I fully believe in him. I'm sure his belief wavered a little bit. But if you start him last night, then one of two things happens. Either he gets back to being the guy that he's been, to his credit, for most of these playoffs, and he plays great and gives your team a chance to win a game you have to have, or he doesn't play well and you give him the quick hook to then light a fire under your team. And that's exactly what happened last night. If you start Calvin Pickard, that's the move. Because if you start Calvin Pickard and Florida puts up 3 goals on him in the first period and you put Stuart Skinner back in, that's it. That's a wrap. That's not firing up anybody. That's just depressing the Edmonton Oilers. Right? So you can only make that move once. And now he's got a decision on his hands and where he goes from here. Is he going to go back to Stuart Skinner again? I don't think he can. I think it's got to be Pickard. And it's not to say that Calvin Pickard was infinitely better than Stuart Skinner last night. I mean, he was better. There's no doubt about that. But it's not like Calvin Pickard stood on his head last night. He wasn't terrible. But you made that comeback last night from 3-0 down to win in overtime, 5-4. You made it on Calvin Pickard's watch. He's a part of that win. I think you got to go back. I think he's the guy now in goal. But I think Knobloch played it perfectly, knowing that if Stuart Skinner did not come out and play well, he could always pull him and use that to fire up his team. And there's no doubt that fired up the Edmonton Oilers. It was the message that was sent in between the first and second period by pulling Stuart Skinner, but also what was said in the dressing room. Apparently, Corey Perry was very vocal after the first period. But the result, it got the desired result. Edmonton came out in the second period and played inspired hockey. In the first period, it looked exactly like the way we left Edmonton in Game 3. Bad penalties, inevitably leading to Florida Panthers goals. It was a wrap. How many tweets did you see from people? And be honest yourself. Did you think it was over? I'll raise my hand. I did. After the first period, I'm like, this thing's a wrap. But credit to Chris Knobloch and credit to the Edmonton Oilers. The desperation level, which probably should have been up to start the game if we're being honest, went up significantly going into the second period, and then they were able to storm back. And I know that goal scored with 20 seconds left in regulation by Sam Reinhart, that could have been a killer. But I think that's a little bit easier to overcome because I think Edmonton knew that they were playing prevent defense a little bit. I think they knew that they took their foot off the gas a little bit. They didn't want to press too much and get caught kind of on the counter from Florida. And, what we say about the prevent defense, right? So I think they could be like, you know what, that one's on us. But still, you're taking, it's a coin flip, right? Going in overtime. The Oilers basically were dead 3 different times in that game. And yet here they are with the series tied up at 2. And they got a little puck luck. Leon Draisaitl was absolutely trying to pass that puck. Corey Perry was not intentionally letting it do anything. It skipped. And thankfully for the Oilers, it skipped right into the back of the net. And that has effectively saved the Edmonton Oilers season. We'll see what they do with it. Florida could still win this series, but I would have been on here if Florida wins last night, and I would have been like, this thing's over. Now I don't know what to think. And this series has been everything we could have hoped for and more. And the one thing that I felt pretty confident in, not so much my pick of the Florida Panthers. I believe that, but I was like, maybe with a healthier Draisaitl, that might make the difference. But what I was very sure about was that Edmonton was not going to let themselves fall down 3-0. So I thought this series would be much more compelling the whole way through than last year's was. But even then, even though I'm kind of right in that, 3 overtime games, 3 OT games, multiple furious comebacks, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in all their resplendent glory, fights being picked like, I feel like that Bill Hader Weekend Update character, Stefan. This series has everything. And now it has Travis and Taylor. That was maybe, if we're being honest, the most significant development of last night. That America's number one couple, America's couple, really, was in the building last night to watch that game. Which I will say, it does put people in a precarious position, doesn't it? Because it's very easy to root against the Chiefs, right? Because even if the Chiefs aren't going up against your favorite team, that would be, obviously, it wouldn't be Taylor Swift. That would make you switch allegiances. But the alternative is another American team, whether it be Philly, Vegas, Pittsburgh, Buffalo. It's an American team. Now, if you're one of those people that, for some weird reason, and I got to be honest, I don't get it. Like, Taylor Swift does nothing but great things for people. Like, she's super talented. I don't get the hate of Taylor Swift. But if you're one of those people that are like, I'm automatically, or maybe it's Travis Kelce, maybe that's a better conversation. If you're like, oh, Travis Kelce's pulling for the Panthers, I can't. Really? Are you now going to root against America? Because that's really the choice that lies in front of you in the Stanley Cup final. I don't know if you knew this. It's either America or Canada. So if now you're not going to root for Florida because of Taylor and Travis, now you're kind of, well, unpatriotic, don't you think? I kid. But wasn't it? Isn't it somewhat this series has seriously been amazing, and has had it checked every box from where the only thing I can think of that this series hasn't had is a goalie fight. Everything else that I want to see in a hockey game or a hockey series, we've seen. Of course, we also have to add in Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Like, just doesn't it feel like a natural progression? Like, the hockey can't get any better. So now we got to add some other kind of storyline on top of it, and it's America's power couple being in the building last night. Man, this series has been so good. So good. And also, I do want to give further credit to Chris Knobloch here. I mean, what did I say going into last night's game? They needed, I guess, more. This is kudos to the Oilers players more than their coach, but they got the depth scoring they needed. It wasn't just Draisaitl and McDavid. But man, just when you thought Oilers are done, this is a wrap. After game 2, after first period of last night, or after game 3, excuse me, after the first period last night, Oilers not done yet, and now we got best of 3. I do think you have to go Calvin Pickard though. I think you have to. You did it. You pulled Skinner. You broke glass in case of emergency, and there's no going back now. I think Calvin Pickard is going to be the starting goalie of the Edmonton Oilers, because if they go back, I mean, they certainly can't pull Pickard, right? If there's a little wiggle room if they just want to go back to Stuart Skinner, although I don't know how you do that after what happened last night. But you certainly can't start Calvin Pickard and see how it goes. If Calvin Pickard gets pulled, then you can only go to that well so often. And I think that's it. I think Calvin Pickard is the goalie moving forward for the Edmonton Oilers. Take your thoughts on last night's game. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll get back to the NBA. Russell Westbrook opts out, where the Nuggets go from here. And it's times like this where I think I miss Tim Connolly. Some news about his team as well coming up next here on Extra Sports 1300. In the meantime, here's a U.S. Open update from Westwood One. Welcome in. Glad to have you. Appreciate you watching the show on a daily basis on our social media platforms, if that is how you choose to consume this show on a daily basis. Of course, you can always listen on air, online, or through the app, but we do provide another way for you to catch the show at XTRA Sports 1300 on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube. And I very much appreciate your patronage. If you'd like to interact with the show, 719-247-1313. That is the text and the phone line, so you can do either. Now, the news of the day is that Russell Westbrook is declining his player option for next season. Does not necessarily mean that he is leaving the Denver Nuggets, although his path back would require other players being moved out. And I think that the more pertinent question is, do you want Russell Westbrook back? And I don't think I want him back at more than what he made this season. I think it was fair compensation for his services. I mean, let's compare it this way. Like, he wasn't better than Bruce Brown, right? So you give him more money, more is expected. And by the way, also the ramifications of if Russell Westbrook, if you bring him back, whether it's at the same dollar amount or a lesser dollar amount, Jalen Pickett's toast. That he's done. You're never going to develop him into what you need. Which is all right if you have Russell Westbrook at $3.5 million instead of Russell Westbrook at $8 million or whatever he's going to ask for. But it's not about him opting out. It's about the bigger picture here of the Denver Nuggets losing another player, right? And the perpetual state that they are in, that they're having to make all of these lateral moves. They're having to just plug up the holes that spring up on this roster. And meanwhile, they're not getting the more important business done. They're not making moves to greatly change their chances this upcoming season. So in some way, I'm saying bring him back, don't bring him back. Not going to make the difference between you being a championship team or not next year. I'm just saying if I had a preference, I would rather have Russell Westbrook opt into his player option and make that much money than be demanding more money of the Denver Nuggets, because then I start thinking about the games that he lost for the Denver Nuggets, the fact that he can't knock down a corner three without, giving somebody in the first row a concussion. I don't want him at a higher dollar amount. But I still get back to what's the plan here with Russell Westbrook's spot on the roster, but also with the entire roster. Because now it seems like the Kevin Durant sweepstakes are picking up. And guess who's in the middle of it? The guy the Nuggets used to have building their roster, Tim Connolly. Shams Charania reporting today that Houston, San Antonio, and Minnesota are all very much in on Kevin Durant. And you could say that Tim Connolly and the Minnesota Timberwolves have not won a title. You're right. But somehow he's able to, if he can get this deal done, look at the significant amount of moves he has made since taking over the Minnesota Timberwolves. Right? He brings in Rudy Gobert, probably a little bit easier. That was his, the Minnesota equivalent of acquiring Aaron Gordon, right? But then he moves Karl Anthony Towns for Julius Randle, and they still get further than the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs. And now he might be moving on or moving to Kevin Durant without giving up. This is what Bobby Marks on ESPN had earlier today. The Phoenix Suns would acquire Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, and Dante DiVincenzo. Not Naz Reid. Can't trade him because he has a player option. Not Julius Randle. Same thing. Certainly not Anthony Edwards. Not Jaden McDaniels. Not Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Get where I'm going with this? Tim Connolly, there's at least some level of belief that Tim Connolly is going to be able to acquire Kevin Durant without giving up a lot of his key players. Now, time will tell if he can actually get that done, but if he pulls that off, that would make Nuggets fans sick to their stomach. Because what makes the Minnesota Timberwolves a difficult matchup for the Nuggets, and we found this out this year. We thought, Karl Anthony Towns leaving, Nuggets will have an easier time. No, it's not them. It's not Kat and Rudy, because Nikola Jokic is going to figure out any matchup he has. It's the fact that Jamal Murray and Michael Porter and Christian Brown can't deal with Naz Reid or Jaden McDaniels. So you're going to keep those guys potentially in place and then add Kevin Durant? That would be nightmarish for the Denver Nuggets. And you just wonder, why was it again that they let Tim Connolly go? He effectively built up the Nuggets into a title contender. Yes, Calvin Booth put the cherry on the sundae, but Tim Connolly did most of the work. And you even heard Josh Kroenke say that their championship window opened in 2021. Tim Connolly was still employed. He's the one that opened up the championship window. And they let him go, and he's gone on to build a Minnesota team that the Nuggets can't beat. And right now feels closer to winning a title than the Denver Nuggets are. So he's responsible for the Nuggets title in a major way. And he's also built a team that the Nuggets can't get around. And meanwhile, the Denver Nuggets have devolved and they went to Calvin Booth and things went sideways. And now they're looking for a new GM. At least that's what they'll have you believe, that they're actually looking for a new GM and not just stalling to make it seem like they're looking for a new GM when all along they were going to promote Ben Tenzer. This is where being a little bit frugal can hurt you. Because that's what it was. It wasn't his job performance. It's that he got a better offer, a more lucrative offer in Minnesota, and Kroenke Sports Enterprises did not want to match that offer. Tim Connolly didn't want to leave Denver. But sometimes in your profession, if you're wanted more somewhere else and they show how much more they want you by giving you a significant pay bump, sometimes you got to make that decision. And they gave him ownership stake. They gave him the same title like he runs the whole show in Minnesota. And I think you can it wasn't really felt initially because Calvin Booth came in and added Bruce Brown and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But really, that's where it started. Most of the work was done at that point. And let's really look at this too. Could we make the argument that in 2023, the Nuggets would have won a title without Bruce Brown? I don't want to take away all credit from him, but that Nuggets team was kind of a juggernaut in that playoff. Was Bruce Brown really the difference? I think you can make a better argument for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope being a difference. But again, Gordon, Jokic, Murray, Porter, Brown. Or no, Brown was Calvin Booth as well. Got to give him a little bit of credit. But my point is, it's hard not to think that the Denver Nuggets would at least be in the same position with a title now with Tim Connolly as they would have been with Calvin Booth, as they are currently. And maybe they would have somebody that you would have a little bit more confidence in that could extricate the Denver Nuggets from this quagmire they find themselves in financially. Because Tim Connolly's, moving Cat to Julius Randle didn't really hurt the Timberwolves. Didn't get them ultimately to where they want to go, but they didn't fall off. They didn't get worse. And now he's in the mix, at least, to add Kevin Durant without giving up anybody that makes the Nuggets' lives more difficult. Why don't they just pay Tim Connolly? I do think about this often. But man, if the Minnesota Timberwolves get Kevin Durant, that'll be a dark day around these parts. But San Antonio and Houston are very much in the mix. And if I were a betting man, I would say he would end up in one of those two places. Those two rosters are a little younger. They have more draft capital than Minnesota does. I think ultimately Durant ends up with one of the two Texas teams, which is not insignificant to the Denver Nuggets. Now, maybe if he goes to San Antonio, maybe you feel like they're starting a little further back than Houston is. But still, with Wemby for another year, with Castle being the reigning rookie of the year, and then you add KD, I don't think it's crazy to think that San Antonio could leapfrog the Denver Nuggets next year. Certainly Houston's already ahead of them in terms of the standings. Now they'd be a more viable title contender if they added a Kevin Durant. If now late in games they're going to KD instead of Jalen Green. So I think Kevin Durant landing on either Texas team is problematic for the Denver Nuggets, and it certainly would be a problem if he ended up with Minnesota. And that's the other part of this offseason. It's not just what the Nuggets do internally. There's an arms race going on, and the Nuggets keep losing it in every offseason. Teams are passing them every year. What are they going to do about that? Because there are multiple teams in the West that are poised to surpass the Denver Nuggets this upcoming season, and we're already talking about OKC and Minnesota. Those two teams don't seem to be going anywhere. And now you add a Houston or a San Antonio. It looks kind of bleak, is really the general idea I'm getting at here. But they do have some money opened up with Russell Westbrook opting out of his player option. And I'll say this for Russell Westbrook. I would rather he have opted in than Dario Saric. If you tell me that Russ and Dario Saric are opting out, now maybe the Nuggets can do something here. Have not gotten the indication that Dario Saric is going to opt out of his deal. which gives the Nuggets very few options to be able to incrementally improve. I mean, I think they're taking a similar path that the Broncos are right now, right? The Broncos around Bo Nix are saying, let's upgrade the running back room a little bit, and let's upgrade safety, and let's upgrade middle linebacker just a little bit, and we'll add it all up, and it will get us to where we need to go. Well, the problem is the Nuggets can't make that kind of an upgrade. Who would have thunk just a couple of years ago that we'd be sitting here and saying that the Nuggets are in a worse financial position than the Denver Broncos, who had to eat the biggest dead cap hit in the history of organized football? The Broncos have done a better job of navigating their financial problems than the Nuggets have. And the Broncos are sitting here adding players left and right. And the Denver Nuggets, all they can do is seemingly lose players. Did not think that would be the case just a couple of years ago. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Russ opting out. Would you like him back? And how about these KD rumors? Looks like he's Western Conference bound, or looks he'll stay in the Western Conference. Which one of those teams I mentioned would be more detrimental to the Denver Nuggets if KD landed there? And we'll keep an eye, or I'll keep an eye on that to see. Things are getting a little bit hot and heavy right now. Seems like we may have Kevin Durant on a new team before we reconvene on Monday. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Broncos mini camp, mandatory mini camp, by the way, in the books. So what do we get out of this? What do we get out of this part of the NFL calendar? I would say probably it differs from team to team. But one thing, probably the biggest thing that I can say is a good thing coming out of Broncos mandatory minicamp is not all this, Pat Bryant's going to be a problem because he high pointed a ball in his shorts. Like these videos going around, like it's all, we don't know. Sean Payton said it himself. We don't know anything about the team. However, it's almost like there are two paths going on right now, two stories with the Denver Broncos, and they do intersect and they do, impact one another. But because of the success of Bo Nix, there's one where it's, can the Broncos take the next step? Can the Broncos win the division? These big conversations that the Broncos haven't been in the last few years. But really, at the heart of it, what the Broncos are trying to do to create sustainable success this year and beyond is still the development of Bo Nix. So the thing that I would be most heartened about if I'm a Bronco fan coming out of mandatory minicamp is that every indication is that Bo Nix is further along now than he was at this time last year, which isn't entirely shocking by any stretch of the imagination. He should be further along. But again, we're still in this delicate phase with a young quarterback where there's a chance he might not be further along. It's possible. He wouldn't be the first second-year quarterback ever to not make progress from one mandatory minicamp to the next. But you've gotten every indication from Sean Payton that Bo Nix is further along with what they want to do at this point of the calendar than he was last year. And that still needs to be the main focus. It has to be about continuing to develop Bo Nix. And as long as because we're not going to be able to make grand proclamations about any of these rookies, we don't know if Drake Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga are going to be healthy, Evan Ingram, like all that's for down the road. But the most important person in this organization is Bo Nix. And if you take Sean Payton at his word, that he's smoother getting out of the huddle, that he's able to spit out the play call a little bit better than he was last year, there's less hesitation, all that kind of stuff, then that is the best news that you could get. How these guys look running around in a scripted practice, scripted for the media so they can hype up one player to the next. I don't care about that stuff. But if Bo Nix is further along this year than he was at this point last year, I think that's the biggest thing you should take away. And so I said, we can have the big conversation about the Broncos getting back to the playoffs or advancing further, but ultimately what's going to get them back to where they really want to go is if Bo Nix continues to develop. And all you can really say at this point is that he's a little bit smoother running the football team. Not the most consequential thing, not going to make the huge difference, but you check in on these anytime Bo Nix steps on the field. Is he still doing good? Is he still progressing? Is he better than he was at this time last year? Sean Payton talked about how important it is for this Broncos team to get off to a better start than they did last year. All right. Bo Nix, we know where he was to start the season last year. He was a rookie making his NFL debut on the road. If the Broncos are going to get off to a better start, Bo Nix has got to be better than he was to start the season in Seattle and then the next week against Pittsburgh. And if the Broncos are going to challenge in the AFC West or going to win a playoff game, it will ultimately be because Bo Nix throughout the season is further along than he was a season ago. And that's not, and I can't reiterate this enough, it's not always the case that a quarterback in year 2 is better than he was in year 1. But if Bo Nix is, then that's what gets the Broncos to go further than they did a year prior. So it's good early signs that Bo Nix has got a better grasp of everything and he's leading the team a little bit better. But we know that this is mandatory minicamp. This is not even training camp. You go down the pecking order. This is down the list quite a ways. But it's all we have in June, and the reports coming out of the Broncos facility is that Bo Nix is progressing further along than he was last year. All good news. We'll see you at training camp. 709-247-1313. Kevin Durant has not been traded yet. But that could happen as early as this weekend. Man, that would just be another thing where, you hear all these reports. I talked about this the other day, that Brian Windhorst is saying that all of this stuff is going to happen quickly. The NBA offseason is going to happen faster and sooner than it normally does. Teams are looking to get a jump on all of this because of all the financial restrictions and then here are the Denver Nuggets. They don't even know who their GM is yet, or at least they haven't informed us yet. If Kevin Durant, the biggest name, now that Giannis is apparently not on the market, the biggest name on the market gets moved before the Nuggets even name a general manager, that's not going to look good. And where are we at with Nikola Jokic's extension? Can anybody fill us in on that? Oh, no, you can't because you don't have a general manager. All right. They might be. The Rockies are always reserved to be in last place when it comes to how you're feeling about these 4 teams. But like the Nuggets are getting further towards the Colorado Rockies than they are, I guess, the Denver Broncos. If we were looking at the teams that there is the most belief in, it would probably be the Broncos right now. Right? Expectations are sky high. Everybody's loving everybody right now. And then it would be the Avs. And then it would be the Nuggets. And then, of course, the Rockies. But Avalanche did sign Brock Nelson. They did get their most important piece of business done already. Nuggets, to their credit, they figured out the head coaching thing, and I think David Adelman was probably the right choice. But they have a lot of other things on their to-do list. Avalanche are almost done. Like Brock Nelson was kind of it. It's only minor moves just to, reconfigure the roster a little bit. They got the big things taken care of. Nuggets have some big pieces of business that they have yet to take care of. And one of those is putting somebody in charge of doing the rest of the to-do list. 719-24/7. 1313 is the number. When we come back, we'll hit the three stories that are driving the show. More on Russell Westbrook opting out, more on Game 4 between the Oilers and the Panthers, and we'll see. We're officially on KD watch. Well, at least I am. You don't have to be. It's all coming up here on Extra Sports 1300. In the meantime, here's another U.S. Open update from our friends at Westwood One. Hello there. Welcome in. So glad to have you on this Friday, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. If you would like to participate in the show, 719-247-1313 is the text or the phone line, and you can also find me at all times on X at Gingerly Tweets. Perhaps you have an opinion, a thought when it comes to these three stories that are driving the show. All right, let's start with another Russ potentially out of Denver.
Murray goes for the right hand. Thought about a quick shot. Top of the key over to Jokic. Got to score. Kick out in the corner. 3, Westbrook. Good! Russell Westbrook puts the Nuggets up by 2, and the Clippers take their final timeout of the night.
Altitude Sports Radio on the call. That may go down as the finest moment of Russell Westbrook's Nuggets career, because his Nuggets career might be over. Reports abound that he is opting out of his player option for next year, which would have paid him $3.4 million. The reasoning behind it, I actually don't think it has much to do with not liking the Nuggets. He wants more money. Plain and simple. And to be fair to the guy, in the NBA, you pay more than $3.5 million for 13 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists a night, which is what Russell Westbrook did last year. The Nuggets, when you look back on it, the Nuggets got some pretty good return on investment. Wasn't all good all the time, but guys with that kind of production don't cost $3.5 million. He costs $1 million more than Hunter Tyson. I can see why Russell Westbrook would like to try and parlay an overall decent basketball season into maybe one last payday before he calls it a career. Here's the problem. If I'm the Denver Nuggets, I'm not wanting Russell Westbrook for more than $3.4 million for next year. How much you make in professional sports, it matters. Why do you think everyone always trashes on Michael Porter all the time? It's because of the money he makes. Russell Westbrook's production mixed with everything else is a worthwhile investment for what the Nuggets paid this year. But if his asking price is going to go up, now if I'm the Nuggets, my expectation for what Russell Westbrook has to go up. And then I look at a guy to say, well, he can't help me be better from 3-point range, which is at the top of my priority list. Now, he cost us a couple games down the stretch. Reportedly, there was a little bit of a discussion that had to happen during that very series you heard the highlight from between Aaron Gordon and Russell Westbrook. All of a sudden, I need a little bit more than 16-5 or 16-6-5 or whatever it was. 13-6-5. And now this other stuff, it matters more when I'm not paying a bargain rate for a guy. Now, I don't know what Russell Westbrook expects to make. And a better question is, who's going to pay him? But I think Russell Westbrook And it happens sometimes. You make an investment, and your investment gives you more return than you were expecting. And I think credit to Russell Westbrook. I think overall, probably outperformed his contract, but I'm not giving him a bigger one. And really, what this is about is the bigger picture with the Denver Nuggets. It's not really about Russell Westbrook. It's about, once again, another player that the Nuggets brought in to try and improve their roster, try to help their depth, is now walking out the front door potentially. And how this team just continues to seem to lose talent since they've won a title than gaining talent. So if they're not willing to play Russell Westbrook and they got to move some other pieces if they're going to, what's the plan here? Is this Jalen Pickett's gig now? Are you all in on Jalen Pickett? Because you're saying the development is important, but you're always putting the caveat, and I'm talking the you being Josh Kroenke and David Adelman. You're putting the caveat on it that they have to earn it, and I agree. But wouldn't that apply to the offseason as well? Like, what have they done to earn their roles for next season at this point? So it's more about what the Nuggets decide to do. Is this their, and I don't know if they were expecting this or not, but is this their, the excuse they need to be like, well, we're not going to find somebody better for $3.4 million, so let's just keep it, save it for a rainy day, and let's press on with the young guys? Is that an okay thing to do, in your opinion, as a Nuggets fan? I don't know if it is. But I also, at the same time, don't think that anybody they bring in to replace Russell Westbrook is going to make me feel any better about the Denver Nuggets competing for a championship. So it's about the bigger picture. The Nuggets, Russell Westbrook opting out is just the news of the day. If the Nuggets make a significant move this offseason, it won't matter one way or another whether Russell Westbrook is coming back or not. And I think that's what the Nuggets have to do. So there's a smaller story about what they do with Russell Westbrook. Do they try to move other contracts to bring him back for more money? I wouldn't do that. But if Russell Westbrook leaving is the biggest story of the Nuggets offseason in terms of player movement, then this will not be a good offseason for the Denver Nuggets. Not just because they would be losing a player, but because it means they're not doing anything else of note to improve this basketball team. Story number 2, to the ice.
Clock pulls it. Cross-ice pass. Draisaitl towards the net. Score! Leon Draisaitl in overtime. The Edmonton Oilers tie the series 2 games apiece.
Kenny Albert on TNT. The Edmonton Oilers come back from the dead multiple times to tie the series at 2 games apiece. They were down 3-0 after the first period. They battled back to take the lead, only to concede a goal with 20 seconds left in regulation, and then the goal you heard there, which was a pass from Leon Draisaitl. He's not trying to score a goal. But it goes down in the box score, and it counts as much as if Leon Draisaitl deked 5 players on the ice and threw it off the face mask of Sergei Bobrovsky into the back of the net. They don't ask how, they ask how many. And last night, the Edmonton Oilers had one more than the Florida Panthers. That's what matters. Now, the catalyst to the Oilers coming back from the dead was the removal of Stuart Skinner in goal. Not because Calvin Pickard came in and looked like Dominic Hasek, but because of the fire that lit under this Edmonton team. In addition to the fire that should have been lit under them when they were down 3-0. But I could also argue that the Oilers that played in the second, third, and overtime period should have been there from the jump, given what had happened in Game 3. But I do want to give credit to Chris Knobloch, because with Stuart Skinner, he handled it the right way. Because either Stuart Skinner last night plays great and gives the Oilers every chance to win, or he does what he did, and then you have that ace up your sleeve, if you will, to be able to pull him from the game and put in Calvin Pickard to send a message, to light a spark, whatever metaphor you want to use. And I do think that was part of the calculation from Chris Knobloch. Now, I think he would have hoped that it would have been the former, that Stuart Skinner would have just come in and played great. But coaches got to think of they got to be like, Doctor Strange with the time stone when his head is moving in all different directions. You got to see every eventuality. And I think that Chris Knobloch was saying either he's going to be great and he's going to get back to being the guy he's been most of the playoffs, or he's going to be bad again, and then I can pull him from the game and use that to motivate my hockey team. So I think Chris Knobloch deserves a lot of credit, but so do the Edmonton Oilers. As poorly as they started and as much criticism as they deserved in that first period, the desperation level went up, the execution level went up, and we got ourselves a series. And what a series it's been. I'm having a really difficult time thinking of another Stanley Cup final in recent memory that has topped this one. 3 overtime games, multiple furious comebacks, the chippiness between the two teams. It's been really, really good. And I am not that I have to have the Oilers win the whole thing. I really don't care who wins, but I want that team to win in 7. I want to squeeze as much more out of this hockey season as I can. So last night was a positive development that we will get at least 6 games. Back to the NBA for story number 3.
And it's just like, he don't see you. Like, I'm looking at his stat sheet. He was 11 for 17. He missed 6 shots and had 31. He's the greatest to ever do it, man. He's big. My hat tilts to him. He's the best.
That is Anthony Edwards of the Minnesota Timberwolves. What if I could go back to that day and tell Anthony he's going to be your teammate here soon? What do you think Anthony Edwards would say? It's not a done deal, but it's possible. Reports from Shams Charania today that the Kevin Durant sweepstakes may happen sooner rather than later. And the 3 teams that he has identified as being most in it: Houston Rockets, San Antonio Spurs, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. None of those 3 landing spots is good news for if you're a Nuggets fan. Like, let me just say that. But perhaps the worst landing spot would be for him to go to Minnesota, especially if the mock trade that Bobby Marks put out on ESPN earlier today is what it is, because they wouldn't be getting rid of Naz Reid or Jaden McDaniels or Anthony Edwards, and those are the 3 guys that have given the Nuggets the most problems. If they could keep all 3 of those guys and then add Kevin Durant, who's still got a lot of game left, even at 37. Don't expect Minnesota to be any more beatable next year. But even you look at him going to San Antonio or Houston, Houston was already ahead of the Nuggets in the standings, but I didn't buy into him as a more legit title contender than the Nuggets. Now with Durant, with Alperen Şengün, with Ime Udoka as the head coach, like Houston might have to be above the Nuggets in the pecking order. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for the San Antonio to surpass the Denver Nuggets this season if they end up with Kevin Durant and another year of Wemby, who apparently is studying to become a Shaolin monk. Any of these three landing spots is bad news for the Denver Nuggets. Maybe an Eastern Conference team can get in there at the last second and pull Kevin Durant to their side. Or maybe Phoenix can just get cold feet and decide to run it back. That wouldn't be bad news for the Nuggets. But the Kevin Durant sweepstakes heating up. Those are the three teams most in this. And we'll see if come Monday, Kevin Durant is in a new NBA city. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. If you're looking for a last-minute gift for dad, or to just add to what you already got, dad, or you just want to treat yourself, our extra sweet deal of the week, City Golf COS, the indoor golf simulators at Trainwreck. You can play that course in Georgia. Funny enough, on the menu that they have there, it's not called what it's called because of trademark, but it's that course. Broadmoor, you could play that. You play Oakmont if you're, into pain. If you have if that's part of who you are. Anyway, City Golf COS, you can get an hour of indoor golf simulator play for just $25. That's a 50% savings. Go to extrasports1300.com to get yours before they are gone, because there's a limited number of those. Taking your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Tom, I always appreciate picking me up on a Friday. He knew I was struggling. He's like, you know what? I got to pick Ryan up here. I got to start something. Says, how can you say Adelman is the right choice for the Nuggets? Which I said earlier. You have 3 or 4 years of prime for the best player in the world, and Adelman is the best you can do. The guy that was letting Jokic draw up plays in the huddle during a playoff game, that's the best you can do. I disagree. You got to swing for the fences. Oh, like the New York Knicks? How's that working out? Do you think, we can all sit and be like Nelson Muntz at the New York Knicks and be laughing at them. But do you think that the Denver Nuggets would be able to fare much better? You think the Nuggets could go to the Houston Rockets and get permission to talk to Ime Udoka? Do you think that the Mavericks would be willing to let Jason Kidd go to Denver? So is David Adelman the best possible coach there is? No. No, he's not. But he's the right choice for the Denver Nuggets given the realistic options that are out there. Look at what the Knicks are going to do now. Because you're not, and even if you say, what about Tibbs? You're not going to hire Tibbs. For the same reason that it wouldn't make sense for the Knicks to hire Michael Malone, it would make less sense for the Denver Nuggets to hire Tom Thibodeau. You just wanted that kind of mentality, that kind of coaching out of the building. So who are the Nuggets going to get that's better? I think you have to kind of turn around and say, who would you bring in that you would say is a better choice than David Adelman, given that the players clearly buy into what David Adelman is telling them? The relationship seems to be better. They performed better. They got further, I think, than they would have under Michael Malone in the playoffs, given all the extracurriculars that were going on. I'm not saying David Adelman next year is going to be the best coach in the NBA. But look at what the Knicks are going through right now. They are the laughingstock of the league. The Nuggets firing Michael Malone, not naming David Adelman as the head coach, they might be getting laughed at as well. Because those teams aren't letting the Denver Nuggets, they sure as heck aren't. Like, those Western Conference teams are going to deny the New York Knicks, but they're going to allow the Denver Nuggets to take Jason Kidd or Ime Udoka from them? And here's the other part, too. It is so not the biggest problem with the Denver Nuggets, by the way. I'm not saying it's insignificant who the coach is going to be, but it's not as important as who's going to be running this roster. not just this offseason, but in off seasons to come. Christian Brown is due an extension in the next year. Nikola Jokic can sign an extension this summer. Michael Porter's contract is up in a couple of years. We can debate David Adelman and whether he's the right guy for the job, but it's not the most important job in the Nuggets organization right now. And if there's a level of frustration that needs to be directed toward the Denver Nuggets for their decisions or indecision, it's not who they chose as their head coach. It's the fact that they're dragging their feet on the naming a new GM. And I think it's just some theater, some stall tactics to be able to kind of come back and say, we did an exhaustive search. Look how long it took us. And we still ended up with Ben Tenzer because he's our guy. That's my theory. That's the more important job with the Denver Nuggets right now. But I do think they made the right choice. With David Adelman, I do. And by the way, who are the Knicks? Good name is their head coach now. Still waiting on that. Johnny Bryant, the Cavs assistant, and Taylor Jenkins, the former coach of the Memphis Grizzlies. Would either of those go over well in New York? Because not only have you fired Tom Thibodeau, and the gist I have gotten from people who cover the Knicks, people that root for the Knicks, it's a mixed reaction. Some people think that maybe it's run its course with Tibbs. Some people are incredibly frustrated with the decision to fire him. It's not unlike kind of how it was around here when Michael Malone got fired. A little bit of a split vote. But now you add on top of it the fact that they are striking out all over the place, trying to replace Tom Thibodeau with somebody that they can parade in front of the media and fans in New York and say, for the people that thought we were making the wrong decision, look at who we got. Well, you don't have anybody. And now you're going to not even... And I understand why Michael Malone's not a fit there, but if you're just talking about ranking the best recently fired coaches, Michael Malone is better than Taylor Jenkins. You're going to put him up there? You're gonna, Johnny Bryant, who is perhaps the less in-demand Cleveland Cavaliers assistant coach because Phoenix hired another Cavs assistant. The one name that came out, I don't even think I talked about this. Billy Donovan was added to the list. So we had Ime Udoka, Jason Kidd, Billy Donovan, Quinn Snyder. Like two are in one group, two are in the other group. Quinn Snyder and Billy Donovan. Now, if I'm a college team and I'm trying to get Billy Donovan, but what is Billy Donovan? I guess I shouldn't forget what he did in OKC. But that was another one that another coach they tried to poach, and the Bulls said, no, thank you. Doc Rivers still available, I think. If they just call up the Bucks. 719-24-7, 1313. Coming up next, somebody, one of the biggest athletes on planet Earth right now, is set to make her return tomorrow. And the newest college sports powerhouse is being built in a sport that you could never guess. I'll talk about it next here on Extra Sports 1300. She's back. Well, tomorrow she's back. Caitlin Clark, after a couple weeks out with her first injury of her WNBA career, first fairly significant injury of her WNBA career. She will be back in action tomorrow against the reigning champion Liberty. And not surprisingly, the WNBA has taken a bit of a hit while she's been away. Some reports varying 50 to 53% drop in viewership of the WNBA over the last couple of weeks while Caitlin Clark has been gone. I mean, this is not surprising. It really isn't, and it's not a bad thing. It really isn't, because it just, in sports there could only be like, what if, remember when Tiger Woods would miss a tournament? Like, it happens, but it just goes to show that Caitlin Clark is to use the Reggie Jackson quote, the straw that stirs the drink. She's the main attraction. She's the biggest star. And the WNBA needs her. Just like golf needed Tiger and the NBA needed Michael Jordan. It happens. It's not a bad thing. It is a little disappointing because people who haven't watched haven't seen that Paige Beckers is absolutely going off. She just came back from injury and is having an amazing start to a rookie season. So there were reasons to watch, but the biggest reason to watch was not there the last couple of weeks. But she's coming back tomorrow. And just in time, because the sports calendar is starting to dwindle down. Seems like we are going to have a few more games in both the Stanley Cup final and the NBA finals, but then what? So having Caitlin Clark back in the mix will help. I don't know if you've seen anything on this, with the House settlement coming into effect, college athletics are going to be forever changed. And one of the great fears that I have is that not only will the new investments, so to say, that are coming in will not go to Olympic sports, that Olympic sports will be cut entirely to make up for the fact that most of these institutions will need to budget $20.5 million or up to $20.5 million to be able to participate in revenue sharing. And schools have a couple more weeks, 17 more days. I believe on the 30th, by the 30th, they have to decide whether they're going to get into the mix on that. And that's a significant decision. And it could mean the end of more schools having Division I athletic programs. Not just any individual sport, the entire program moving away from Division I. We already saw that a while back. A school just saying, yeah, we're not going to be D1 anymore. We can't do this. But there is a bright spot here. If you're a fan of Olympic sports, if you're a fan of women's sports, because one school is going well above and beyond in order to fortify and strengthen one of their Olympic sports. The catch is, are they playing by the rules? Texas Tech women's softball just came off of losing the Women's College World Series to in-state rival Texas. They already have a pitcher by the name of Nigeri Kennedy, that is earning $1 million in NIL. And even if you have a cursory knowledge of softball, you probably did not hear a lot about Texas Tech softball. Well, that's how they got put on the map. Is that they were able to land one of the best pitchers in America with their NIL investment. And they liked the fact that they went to the Women's College World Series so much that they're throwing even more money into their softball program to poach literally any other All-American they can get. I believe the count is now 5 All-Americans that played this year at other schools are now going to Texas Tech. And the latest one is from Tennessee, and the Tennessee coach is saying tampering is going on. That these athletes are being recruited while they're still enrolled, while they're not going through the proper procedure to enter the transfer portal and go somewhere else. In fact, one entered the portal with a do not contact, and like less than 24 hours later was at Texas Tech. So there's some shenanigans going on here, according to many. And that's a line you don't, some people are calling it a loophole that they're finding that, yeah, the schools in the program itself can't contact these people, but their third party, their NIL arm can. And there's a debate going on right now about that. Good luck getting it enforced. I mean, that's kind of where I would land on the whole thing. I don't know. Seems like a very gray area that Texas Tech is exploiting. And look, we don't like it when the Vegas Golden Knights use LTIR. So, got to be fair here. It does seem like Texas Tech is coloring outside the lines a little bit here. But ultimately, who's going to stop them? So that's a negative about this. But the positive story is here is a program, or here's an athletic department that is valuing one of their Olympic sports, that are leaning into one of their Olympic sports in light of everything that has happened with the House settlement. And Texas Tech, if all of this stands and they don't get in trouble or any of these transfers back out, they could be one of the biggest powerhouses in all of college athletics. They already made the Women's College World Series without these handful of All-Americans that are now going to be at Texas Tech next year. So overall, I would say good for Texas Tech, but kind of seems like they're being a little sketchy here. Not with the money they're giving, that's allowed. It is the Wild West after all. They're allowed to. This College Sports Commission hasn't come into effect yet. So they're allowed to do this. It's just a matter of, did they contact them while they were still enrolled? Did they enter the transfer portal and then were contacted? And to me, this is just another sign of college athletics becoming more like the pros, because coming up on June 30th is the legal tampering period, I believe, in basketball. And we're going to hear a lot of reports that guys are going here and going there. Well, how is that possible? Free agent legal tampering just started. Free agency just started. How can someone make up their mind so quickly? Well, we all know why. It's not great, but do we make a big fuss over it when all this news starts hitting our timeline from Shams of all these moves that are being made in the NBA? We really don't complain that much. We're happy for the news. We're happy for the content. Seems like that's happening a little bit with Texas Tech softball here. A loophole, a gray area, or just blindly, well, not blindly, knowing full well that they're breaking the rules. I'm sure this story will become a bigger and bigger thing as we move throughout the next week or so. But Texas Tech softball about ready to be an absolute juggernaut. And I got to say, I don't hate a school looking at one of their Olympic sports and saying, let's throw our investment behind that. Wreck them. That's what I have to say on the subject. What else? Oh, game 4 tonight, and I said, let's see if Tyrese Halliburton can follow up what he did in game 3. Let's see if he takes another step, because I do think the way that Indiana won game 3 was significant. They didn't wait till the fourth quarter. They didn't wait for their late game magic. Oklahoma City jumped on them out of the gate like they do to everybody. But in that second quarter, Indiana answered right back. So I think that was a sign of Indiana improving, Indiana learning some lessons, and Indiana fortifying themselves a little bit more as a championship team. Now, there's still a long way to go, or not a long way, 2 wins, but it feels like a long way. Can be a long way. But now can you follow it up? Now can you really put OKC in a tough spot? And obviously Tyrese Halliburton and how he plays, and if he can be consistent from one game to the next, will go a long way to whether Indiana can put OKC in a 3-1 deficit. I'll wait to see. I think OKC wins tonight, one way or another. I think OKC evens this series. But I've already been very upfront in that I'm not going to buy into the Pacers. I just won't. Because I can't, at times I can't believe that this team is doing what they're doing. I love seeing it, don't get me wrong. Just can't fully invest in what they're doing. So game 4 coming up in less than an hour. We'll have a pivotal game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final. This will be interesting because now the series is going back and forth. And don't forget, one thing that hasn't been talked about a lot when it comes to the Stanley Cup Final, you know how far these two teams have to travel? This is the furthest distance between two Stanley Cup Finals teams ever. And it was the case last year. And it was a bigger story last year. Now we've gotten used to it and we don't talk about it as much. Still is. And now they're going clear across the continent over the next few days. But tomorrow night back in Edmonton for a pivotal game 5, I expect Calvin Pickard to be in goal for the Oilers. And we'll see what heroics Leon Draisaitl has in store. Don't be shocked. If Edmonton wins, Leon Draisaitl is going to win the Conn Smythe. Like, I don't think that should come as a surprise to anybody. Now it's on Florida to respond after last night. And I don't think they choked. I don't look at it that way. It's easy to do that, but and yes, perhaps they let go of the rope a little bit. It's always both when you have a comeback like that. But I think the bigger story, what it was more about, is the Edmonton Oilers finally raising their desperation level to where it should have been, facing a 3-1 deficit, or facing the possibility of going down 3-1. And it took a little nudge with the pulling of Stuart Skinner from the game, but they got it. Now, how does Florida respond? Because I don't think they want to be all of a sudden go from having a 3-0 lead after the first period last night, which if they could have held on to, they would have had a 3-1 lead, and the idea that they might be coming back to Florida playing for their season. So I expect Florida to be the more desperate team, and they can't pull Bobo. They gotta leave Sergei Bobrovsky in goal. They can't play that card. But that's a championship team. They've lifted the Stanley Cup. They just did it last year. They know what to do. We'll see if they do it tomorrow night. Also tomorrow, on a more local level, Switchbacks finally back at home, taking on Oakland Roots. Gates open at 6. First 2,000 fans through the gates will get a Switchbacks canvas bag, and then there will be a fireworks show as per usual after the match. Love to see you out there. Limited tickets still available, switchbacksfc.com. That will be the next time I'll talk to you, either in person or in this capacity, as Roland and I will hit the air at 6:30 to bring you coverage of that match tomorrow night. If I don't talk to you then, I'll certainly talk to you Monday. Will Kevin Durant be on a different team? Who will be facing elimination in the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Final? Busy weekend of sports ahead. Enjoy it, and we'll reconvene on Monday.